Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm Scott.
I'm Shatay, and we're the Hazes.
Welcome to the Love Haze podcast, where we talk about those unspoken hard parts of life. We love to process out loud what most folks experience in silence.
That's right. This podcast is for people like us who want to disrupt those cycles, mindsets, and behaviors that no longer serve you so that you can heal your relationship with yourself first, which will help you lead freer, healthier, more fulfilling lives.
Listen, y'all, we have wanted to quit podcasting so many times. As recently as this weekend, we were talking about wrapping up the DJ cord, letting this thing go, and getting away from here.
As recently as today.
If we're being honest. But thankfully, we've been able to get some reframing, get recentered, and make up our mind that we're going to push forward. Really got some things in us that helped us along the way. And we're hoping that this conversation will help y'all along the way. We're going to push through. Mm-hmm. Welcome back to our Black Love Journey. Let's get into this thing.
Let's go.
So, Mrs. Haze, not that I don't know, but set us up. How did we get here?
Y'all, we didn't want to quit this podcast so many times, like a lot of times. I want to say we've throughout these past, we started in 2020. It was like a pandemic project for us that we kept. And we've gotten some decent feedback along the way. Folks who listen and like really feel moved by the conversations we have, which is beautiful. And how much money it's costing, and like the reach just doesn't feel like it's like worth the juice. Doesn't always feel worth the squeeze. Meaning, like we have so much equipment. I know y'all probably seen like behind the scenes photos where we got these, what are these called? Umbrella lights and microphones and new cameras, and we tried a whole backdrop set up here one night that hazed the hell out of us. And even beyond that, like it costs money to have the streaming platform and the website and the time, the energy that it takes to like post on social media and to send out a newsletter each week. And then you're doing that. Keep in mind, we got regular day jobs. We got W-2 jobs. Okay. This actually is not really bringing in a ton of money. Like we've got supporters, which we're grateful for, on Spotify, and people who are, patronizing our shirts and things like that, the merch, which we're so grateful for. And it's a lot, you know, and then on top of work, it's like family stuff happens, and then we got to like try to find time to sew into our relationship. And I know that we've been in a place before where we've been tired and we'd be like, okay, let's just push through. Let's like just a couple more episodes for the year and we'll be done. But this year, the first time in real life, we were like, are we going to still do this? Because is it worth it? Does it even matter? We're exhausted. It's money we could be spending on traveling or something else. It's time that we could be spending just with each other or with friends, or like doing side hustles that are actually bringing in more money. Like, is it just an expensive ass hobby that we need to let go? And so I think that conversation was like literally on a Saturday. We went to church on Sunday, and the whole message, that man was talking directly to us. The title of the message was Overwhelmed but Overcoming. I cried the whole time, y'all. My tissues were soaked the whole time. From the very first praise song, I was in tears the whole time, which is not uncommon for this church that we go to. Cry. I'm crying it just really speaks to my spirit every single time. But yesterday, that man was all up and through our business. And so the premise was really just, you know, I don't want to give away the nugget in terms of how to overcome it already, but the gist of the whole message was really about like when opposition comes at you like this from every single direction, like how to think about those times, which will help you push forward. And like, are you focused? What are we focusing on? Are you focusing on the promise, the purpose? Or are you focusing on like all the distractions around you? So that's what we're talking about today. And hopefully the transparency around like, this is episode 70 and we've done this over the course of 3+ years, but it was not without like, oh, we're going to keep doing this several times through. And it felt the realest this past weekend. We were like, you know, I don't even have to do this anymore. I'm tired. Like, is it worth it? So that's where we are. Are there times in your life aside from this where you just kind of felt like giving up? Like, can
You
you?
said aside from this,
Yes.
because this still a little
Uh-huh.
bit,
Yeah.
and I think my wife has a little bit more resolution than I do, but I'm getting there. I'm slower. I'm a slow walker with this thing, so I'm still powering through it. But the answer to your question, have I had moments when I felt like giving up? Yes, frequently, all the time.
Mm,
Uh, and it's not that I'm a quitter.
no, you're not.
Uh, I really have learned with your help to give myself credit for the times that I rethink and find a way to keep going. But I think one of the things that I do with uh, the group of men that I serve at my job and with the man to man stuff that I do is just the pattern that I recognize is like a lot of men, we want to lose on our own terms.
Mm,
And when we see things starting to like decline or go downhill, we have more of a tendency to like ball the whole thing up and throw it away
mm,
and just call it a loss rather than learning how to pivot or how to have some level of stick to itiveness,
mhm,
how to keep going when it looks like it's not going to work out. And for a very long time, that has been the way that I've done business. Like if it looks like it's not going to work out, it gives me an opportunity to brace for the blow,
mm,
so it doesn't feel as bad. Like if something is going downhill and I feel like it's going to fail, I'd rather be able to brace for the blow of the loss or be able to just call it quits and start all over again from scratch and go in a different direction. Maturity and healing and therapy have really helped me to learn how to think about the art of the pivot and doing something different when I want to give up. But yeah, with jobs, relationships, with especially family relationships that I was trying to repair at one time. I've taken on that attitude sometimes of like, okay, it might be time to call it.
mm.
Um, and those are moments when I felt like giving up. When our fertility journey, we've talked about that.
Child.
Um, I think I've
Mm,
I've really gone through a lot as it relates to the fight in my mind with like not giving up
mhm,
on faith and believing, but like telling myself that okay, God has said no, and it's time to move on from this thing. And so to me, it is giving up like this, what I felt like was this toxic faith in something that wasn't going to happen.
yeah.
So that's one or two or three of many times that I felt like giving up.
I immediately think about I've shared this story before, my dance career. It's a time it was one of those defining moments of my life is why I think one of the reasons it comes up for me so often in some of these stories about like what I learned about myself and what I learned about purpose and things like that. But being in LA, working overnight, like I was there for a little over 4 years. And that's where I really kind of credit me kicking off even though I had worked, like, had been paid for dancing before, for whatever reason in my mind, it was like this was me officially kicking off being a
Hmm.
professional dancer and like getting the agent and going on all these auditions and being in a gazillion classes and like really understanding what it looks like to have, professional headshots. Cause my first set of headshots I got were actually like model comp cars and I didn't
Mm.
know that what the difference was. So I like really learned how to be a professional in LA. And working overnight, doing auditions, doing all the things, and not, like I say all the time, I ain't booked Beyonce. I booked a bunch
Hmm.
of other things,
Hmm.
teaching gigs, choreography gigs, like all kinds of things, but hadn't got to like the scale or the level that I wanted to. And there's a whole mess of stuff on the back end that I understand why I wouldn't have gotten that there. But I was like, I quit. Like, I can't afford to live here. I don't have the support system I need here. My family's not here. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people who are out there pursuing that stuff and they have people they can like stay at their mama's house or
Yeah.
a relative's house or like their costs are not that expensive. And so I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't have any money. I don't have no time. Like I'm just exhausted. I don't have anything to show for it. And I did quit, but one of the things that I learned now in hindsight is that I had already sown all these seeds. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I quit, when I took my hands off of it, it actually gave it the space and the time for the harvest to come through, just
Yeah.
in a way that I hadn't imagined it.
Mm-hmm.
I think about that for our fertility journey or our journey to parenthood as well, that, as recently as June, like both of us,
Yeah.
I know for sure, but me especially, I was like, I don't know where we go from here. I don't think there is a place to go from here. But just this past weekend, I've been starting to feel like maybe there is a place to go from here, and maybe it's okay that we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So just like
Mm-hmm.
the faith being restored and me remembering the seeds that were planted. So much like the dance career example, and we can really apply it to the podcast too. This is our first time like talking it through this way. Like we've
Mm-hmm.
already sowed 3 years worth of seeds into
Right.
it. And so like if we took our hands off of it a little bit, what could come from it? Or and the same thing with becoming parents. Like we've sown years of seeds and
Yeah.
into it. Like if we took our hands off of it, what could we allow it to become?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting to the place of understanding about me that sometimes I can only celebrate when I have finished, when I see the victory. And I'm being matured. I'm being spiritually matured and otherwise matured. Um, just in being able to have enough faith in the work that I'm doing to not know what the outcome is going to be, before I can, give credit where credit is due, before I can be able to celebrate, what my higher power is doing, to be able to know that I'm being diligent and that I'm doing it even when it doesn't feel good and when I don't feel like it, all of those things. And those things have been good in the past for me to be able to say, but implementation has been a different thing for me. And those are the times when I really give myself permission to quit. Like, I don't see no fruit coming from this. There's so many things that in my life and be like, okay, the fruit is gonna be there. And there are things in both of our lives that have happened where we haven't been able to see the fruit. And now I'm having to go back and ask myself, is it that I don't see the fruit, or I don't see the fruit that I wanted to see? Like the fruit doesn't look like what I thought it was going to look like. And we talked about that a little bit the last episode, but that's something that's in process for me. I'm still having to work through that, like knowing what the fruit looks like.
Yeah. There's a couple of thoughts that came up for me. One is like, I don't know that it's not fruit. It's like there's a sowing season. So we've been
Mm-hmm.
sowing. And so the roots are probably flourishing downward, but we haven't seen anything come upward that feels like it's enough to latch on to, that feels like, you're actually headed in the right direction. So that's tough. And that brings me to my second thought. That is when most people quit.
Yeah.
And even Pastor was talking about that, and we've heard it before. Most people, like after sowing for a while, they don't see anything, they quit. And it's like right before that thing was about to sprout, right before that thing was about to bud. And so I say this about Beyonce, like she can outwork anybody. And that's essentially what you kind of have to do. You have to just keep working. You have to keep grinding. And then eventually, something will come up. So it's a little bit of, it's like the waiting game, we had an episode about this before, and as much as I hate, this is exactly why I hate this saying. This is what it looks like to trust the process.
Yeah.
If y'all needed an illustration, this is what it is right here. When you're like, what the hell is going on? But I'm gonna stick beside it. That's that's what it's like to trust the process. And it's uncomfortable, y'all, and it's exhausting. And it's like, it's almost like, am I gaslighting myself, or am I just trusting myself to know enough to know, like, okay, what we have is a good thing, but maybe we need to pivot or whatever. And that's sort of getting into some navigation things. But
yeah,
yeah,
you have a very positive outlook on that. And for me, I got my hoe in my hand and my rake and the tiller, and I'm looking at this field and I've plowed this shit 5 or 6 times, and I'm watered, and ain't nothing coming up, and I'm ready to pack my shit up and go in the house because it's hot out here. And that's the human side of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this struggle between like, and this is what choosing the healing looks like for me. Like I have this very real part of me um that, you know, wants to give up. I have everything, the what I see says you should walk away.
Mm.
What I believe
Yeah.
and the work and what I have to do, what I know that I have to do says keep going. And
Mm.
I just want to acknowledge that for me and for many other folks, it's hard to get away from what I see,
Yeah.
or what I don't see.
Yeah. That is, people who are visionaries or entrepreneurs or whatever you want to call them, dreamers, they have the
Hmm.
ability to see what no one else sees yet. And then they keep
Hmm.
working towards it, even when other people, even when it's hard, when you're ridiculed, when you're misunderstood, when you're insert all the things here. And then it comes to fruition. You think about Noah and the ark and like,
Hmm.
you know, this thing is coming, I'm gonna build for it. Or if you think about something more practical, who decided that we needed like computers or the internet? Like,
Right.
can you imagine trying to describe to someone like, I'm gonna make this thing that's like not, you can't touch it, but it's like in the air and we're gonna like share information on it.
Right.
It's not gonna be on paper, but you'll be able to see it from like computers, which at the
Yeah.
time were like dinosaurs. Like, can you
Hmm.
can you imagine that? Or like
Yeah.
someone saying, I want to make a phone where you can talk to people and you don't have to be at home. Like you don't have to be on a landline, but you're
Hmm.
gonna like talk through airwaves. Like, can you imagine the
Yeah.
ridicule for that kind of stuff? But they kept at it, however many versions how many
Yeah.
prototypes, like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I just kind of brings us to, the what is the haze
Child.
of pushing through for the promise and for your purpose.
Child, you tired. You don't feel like doing it. Like,
Why you yelling at me?
that's the haze. You're exhausted. It's hibernation time for me.
Yeah,
Okay?
it is.
So like,
I'm aware.
do you know where I want to be? Right here on this couch, y'all, in my nook, laid up. That's what I want to do. Do I want to be spending an off day filming an
Mhm.
episode? It's that kind of thing. Like it's the sacrifice of love,
Yeah.
you are foregoing other things to stick with it.
Hmm.
You're having the mindset shifts that you're having to like coach yourself through. Like, no, we're gonna keep pushing. Like, this is the right thing to do. People are being helped by it. Hell, we're being helped by it.
Yeah.
We're able to like talk through our issues or our challenges or whatever it is in real time and like
Yeah.
share that with the world, so to speak. So, but it's exhausting.
So a haze of it for me is just that being able to talk through your issues, sharing with the world, but not having resolution.
Mm,
Like I'm so used to being able to share like after the victory is won,
mm,
you know, and having to share in real time, like making up our mind this morning that we're going to talk through this thing that is actively going on with us now. And it all sounds fine and dandy when we do our introduction, when we talk about, we talk about those unspoken hard parts of life and we process out loud what most people experience in silence. And there's a part of me that want to experience this shit in silence. Like, I do not want to do this. I want to talk to y'all after, like, you know what happened? Then we won the Mega Millions. And shawty, all we had to do was show up to the podcast studio and it was ready. And all we had to do was talk. And that's not where we are.
That's what you call
And
a highlight reel,
yeah, it is. And we're just not immune. We're
Hmm.
just knowing that you need to talk through things and that transparency is a part of this journey and welcoming people into the same space of healing that we are in is it's a bit of a haze
Yeah.
because all of us want control, all of us want to know what the outcome is going to be. It'd be great to welcome people into this space to be able to say if you do X, Y, and Z, then everything's going to be great
Yeah.
on the back end.
Mhm.
And it is not that we are not subject matter experts in that way. We're welcoming people in to like really deal with themselves and really address the things that to invite them into letting go of control and invite them into like being cool with whatever the outcome is, like still being good with themselves as we're actively trying to be good with ourselves, no matter what the outcome is, and not quitting and continuing to do the work, to know that purpose is continuing to do the work no matter what the outcome looks like. And that's a
Yeah.
hell of a haze.
Yeah. And I think there's also a bit of it going back to the idea of trust for me in terms of my intention this year. It's like how much you're gonna trust yourself, how much you're gonna trust God that it's going to actually work out for good. Like
Hmm.
how much will you trust? Are you gonna just like give in because, again, because if you could see the thing, that's
Yeah.
faith is not required for that.
Yeah.
Right. That's there's no room for magic to come in, as was our therapist says. If you can see it, if you can make it happen
Hmm.
in your own strength, you don't have any space for the magic to come in. But really, like if we are trying to build something that outlasts us, or in any regard, outlasts
Hmm.
us, impacts more people than just us, like is about more than just us, that
Yeah.
requires like some magic that we can't control. That we
Yeah.
we gotta be the vessels for it to happen. But it's like, are you gonna trust that it can still happen even
Yeah.
when you don't see it, when you don't understand it?
Hmm.
Yeah. Any more hazes?
Yeah. Plenty of more hazes because I have them. Um, but also it is the part that requires you to also be mindful, um, to not be so focused on like or future focused that you forget to like the things that are happening for you in the now. Like there are so many things that have happened for us in the now that are like they're good things.
Mhm.
Like even in the midst of the hazes of our journey to parenthood, of like career shifts and
Mhm.
all of those things, like mindfulness requires me to understand that, we both have our health. Um, we talk about frequently how we've drawn closer to each other. You get on my nerves a little bit today, but we're
Same.
still
Same.
we still have drawn closer to each other in this season. And even being able to like tell the person that I care about that she get on my nerves a little bit is something that I would have held,
Mm.
for myself, um, in other relationships, and allow that to fester and become resentment. So that level of mindfulness is something to be grateful for. It's a
Yeah.
haze, but also being able to celebrate where you are and to know that where you are is a blessing. Right. At some point, that was something that I was praying for, to be
Yeah.
able to have a partner that I can be like, you know what, you on my damn nerves. I love you. You're
I
on
ain't
my
like what
damn
you
nerves today.
said.
Um,
Yeah.
all of those things, they're a haze, but it requires us to be mindful. It requires that we be able to celebrate in this season. So you know that the win is not just this distant thing. Like
Yeah.
there's not just this finish line where it is done, right? Purpose and the promise look like all of those things. And we can't be so focused on like this tremendous end goal that we,
Mhm.
we forget to celebrate the small wins along the way, the
Mhm.
things that we are being shaped and molded for. And ultimately, me being able to say I'm built for this is like I'm being built in this season. I am building up the resilience that I need to be able to do all of this work, and to be able to know that when I get to whatever that bigger goal looks like, I'll be able to be like, that was good. I did that. And also keep going, right? To
Mm.
have that level of resilience. It's a haze, but I'm okay also with being able to celebrate the wins along the way, and being able to celebrate the fact that I have what I need in this moment for the journey to be able to pivot as I need to, and to be able to have a good life,
Mm.
with my wife, with my family, with folks that I care about, to be able to have difficult conversations and move forward.
Yeah. You said a lot of things that actually are touching spot on what I was thinking. Like, yes, you can do all of these things on your
Hmm.
journey to build a body of work, and that the end goal is the body of work or the praise for the body of work or all the followers for the body of work. But I think another part of it that isn't talked about as much is like who you become as you're building the body of work, who you're evolving into. Like what are we learning about ourselves? What are we learning about our relationship? Like what are we actually learning and becoming in the process of doing this? I can unequivocally say, did I say that right? Unequivocally? For some reason, I want to say unequivocally. No, that's not right. Unequivocally.
So you went back to get it wrong.
Nice. I was trying to bring you in on my thought process. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, how about that? That who I am today on this episode 70 versus like where we were episode 1, completely different. Like the growth there. Even y'all want to talk about how this episode looked on episode 1? It was yellow. We didn't have no lights. We were filming on our phone. We didn't have no microphones. It was a hot mess express. But we did it. We started. And now like here we are complaining about overproduction, So it's like who you become in there, I think, is also important and not something to be forgotten about. So we talked a lot of hazes. How are we navigating them? And this is real time discussion because I don't think we got anything figured out.
Well, for me, it's figured out because even with what you're just talking about, right? We talked about it was hot mess express, right? But I think who we've become is like people who want to operate with a spirit of excellence, like no matter what. We want to give the best quality. We want to, be feeling our best to share information to, all of those things are things to be celebrated in the midst of the journey.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of getting into some ways to navigate the haze. Do you have thoughts about how you do that?
Yeah, I think if you think about the example I gave with my dance career, and hopefully that's the case here with our journey to parenthood as well. Sometimes you just need a break. Like sometimes you just need to pause and be like, okay, I need to restore so that I can have the energy to keep going. Even though at the time I thought I was quitting. But what I really did was I slept for about a month and then I just started dancing again. And then all of a sudden it was like people were calling me, right, to like be in stuff. So those seeds that I planted bore fruit in a way that didn't imagine. Because at this point I had moved back to Texas. You know what I mean? I was just in a completely different space and community. And all of a sudden, like I'm getting gigs, So I think do you need to pause? Do we need to pause? That's something we were talking about. Like, do we pause here at this point and just pick back up next year? Or, y'all, we really only have, after this episode, 5 more for the rest of this year. And like this year will be done. Or like, do we figure out a way to make 5 more episodes make sense so that we're at least having a full month off? So it's like, do you try to work how can you get some rest is basically one way to navigate it so you can keep going.
Stay tuned. Y'all don't see episode 71 until January. You know what the choice was.
You will know the answer. But maybe we can squeeze a couple more out, your face is saying it all. You're like, I ain't got nothing for you, B. Can you just comment and let us know what y'all want? Like, are you going to listen to these episodes if we do 5 more this year? Tell us.
Might be the same 2 people. Sure, you guys keep going. We love ya.
What else? We can ask for support when you need it. So, that's sort of another thing that we're doing on the back end, just to apply it to real time for the podcast. This year, we got a podcast manager, which is another expense, y'all, where it's like, are we going to keep spending this money? But the person has helped us to really level up like our show notes and all the things that would make it easier for people to find us in an organic way. And so we are transitioning to a different type of support. So not so much about podcast management, but like, what's a team of folks that can help us a little bit with the podcast, a little bit with management at home? Like we got like a VA team essentially, and like they're about to start this week, and maybe that will lighten the load for us so that we have more energy and time for this thing that we feel purpose to do, So like what does support look like is I think another way to navigate it.
Also, reframing, which is kind of what we've been talking about. Like what's a different way to think about this? What is like, what are different ways to solve this problem?
Mm-hmm.
What's a different way to look at it?
Mm-hmm.
Number one, yeah, expenses, but also we got it.
Mm.
Um, God has allowed for us both to have promotion after promotion after promotion. More should say than me. But we have the money that we need for this.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is our purpose work, then it can't be about the fame or the popularity or the
Yeah.
followers or any of those things. Like if we say that we are doing this because it's our purpose work and God is providing so that we can have the money to do this purpose work, then we are doing what we've been called to do, what we've been asked to do. And it doesn't have to be about what success looks like to the podcast world or to social media or to followers or to things that we typically see success look like. It
Yeah.
is, knowing that we have what we need to be able to do this work. We are not talking about stopping this work because we ran out of resources, and I believe that God will supply.
Yeah.
And if we need to take a break, we can take a break.
Yeah.
If we need to pivot, we can figure out how to do that and continue to do this purpose work. We just may not know what the fruit looks like.
Yeah. I would say another thing, I'm gonna just be 100 with y'all. I'm gonna keep it transparent since we're telling all our business today anyways. We done told them we done spat a little bit before we filmed. We wanted to quit the podcast. We tried to break up with the podcast. The other thing that was really a blow for me is like in terms of how we're expanding our reach, the approach that we've been trying to take is being on other people's shows, which has been a blessing. And I love meeting all the folks who are doing podcasting. And it's sort of like a community of people who understand what you're going through and who also had to like take breaks. So we were just talking to someone who we're going to be on a guest on their show in a couple weeks, I think within the next month. And she was like, I had to take a break in April or May. Like just to even have those conversations has been a blessing. So again, with the support, it's like, what community are you surrounding yourself with? But one of the things that was a blow is that in addition to trying to like be on other folks' show to sort of like get exposure to their audiences, we also submitted for a podcast competition, one of the Black podcast competitions, and we weren't selected to be like one of the nominees for the award. It was kind of like, we got all these episodes and we're like operating in the spirit of excellence. Like, how dare you don't choose us? But I think that's part of the process, but it was also another reason for me. It was another, pebble to be like, maybe we don't even need to be doing this. Like, we can't even get a nominee. So like, it's all of those things that I think make it difficult, but we're talking about navigating. So what was the last thing that you said? I can come back to it. Pivot. Maybe. I mean, as long as it's still in alignment with what the ultimate, I think, calling is or purpose is, or, whatever the promise is. So like, could it look differently? I think, yeah, maybe in a way. If I'm thinking about dance career, like it didn't end up looking like Beyonce at that time, and maybe it could still be a Beyonce thing. Just put that out in the ecosystem in the world. But what it ended up was like becoming choreographing for musical theater, which I didn't know I would love, but I did. Or getting an MFA and becoming a dance educator. Like, it just looked, I was still working in that capacity and actually serving in a way that I needed to be, but I didn't know that it would end up looking like that. So yeah, I agree with pivot as
Stevie Wonder could have saw that. When you enjoying telling people what to do.
Really? Don't get mad at me because I am authentically and naturally a leader. Okay?
You leave me.
Anyway, so we said pause, reframing, pivoting. I wanted to add something else around reframing that I mentioned briefly at the top of this episode. In church, the overwhelmed but overcoming, Pastor Bryant was saying, reframe your thinking around like if you're getting you could call it attacks or challenges in a lot of different directions. Instead of being like, oh, I'm so tired. Why is all of this happening to me? It's like, see it as a sign that it's like something's about to happen. Like there's no way that you could have this much resistance or this many issues without something big about to happen. And so he was like, maybe you could just pause and say, what's the breakthrough that's about to happen? And that I found really helpful. Like, let me not actually focus on all of the challenges. Let me not focus on the resources of the fatigue or the time or the rejection. But let me just focus on like actually what could be about to sprout up if I just kept pressing forward a little bit more. And that was so helpful for me because it helped me for someone who is usually more positive than not, more optimistic than not, I was feeling real like, what's the point, And that's not like me. And that nugget right there just helped me to shift to be like, okay, I can focus on this thing. Even when I don't know what the prize is, I can focus on the possibility. And that was super helpful for me.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm shifting into like the biggest lesson that I've learned about having to push through, about persevering. But I'm thinking about that and going back to your point about how we went for these podcast awards and didn't get selected. All right, one of the reasons I think that we started the podcast was like people weren't having these discussions.
Yeah.
So if we started this because people weren't having these discussions, then I don't know that it's okay for us to expect to be celebrated on the level of
fair.
what people are actually doing. When I look at like a lot of the super successful podcasts, they're really around the train wreck kind of stuff. People who I see experiencing the most success are, around like stuff that we not about that. Like we went to a very popular live podcast filming a couple weeks ago, and I was just done with the content. Like the room was full, it was packed out. We were in VIP, and then there are like thousands and thousands of other people waiting to get into that room, and we left early because they spent the entire time arguing back and forth about men and women and relationship and how all men this and all women that and all you got to do is this and we don't believe that, so those are not our people. And so to be doing this work, trying to form community for people to have difficult conversations and to figure out how they can individually, address their problems with the people that they're in relationship with, and low-key have a little bit of expectation that we'll be rewarded on the level of the foolishness that we don't really get into. I can celebrate their success and know that that is for them, but also recognize that our platform is for us and for people like us who understand that it ain't an all men thing. It ain't an all women thing. It ain't a you need to do this to be successful in relationship with any man kind of thing. We believe that relationship is individualized. And a lot of people are having those conversations about what all men and all women should do. But a lot of those people are not experiencing success in relationship because they're trying to like get this general answer to the test, and people just are individuals.
Yeah.
And you have to be in individual relationship with individual people and do the individual work to experience individual success. And I think the biggest lesson that I'm learning is that I may never get rewarded on that level. And that may not be what success looks like for us. That may not be what the fruit looks like for us. It is the messages that we get that say, hey, I listened to 3 episodes of your podcast and it really helped me like understand that I need to do some individual work on myself. Right? Or I listened to what y'all said about this and I'm going through this thing with my mom. Can y'all talk about this?
Yeah.
People who really like dial in. And I was just talking shit a few minutes ago about the 1 or 2 people that, comment on our stuff. But those 1 or 2 people, if I'm being honest, we changed those 1 or 2 lives, then we've done much more than a room full of thousands of people who have cussed each other out for an hour and a half and have no resolution about what their next steps are.
Yeah.
Have
that's
no
real.
confidence about how they'll operate in individual relationship.
Yeah.
So again, it comes back to me like, what does the fruit look like?
Yeah.
You know, and if it has to look like this massive blooming tree with so much fruit that is falling on the ground and rotting, then it's not important to me.
Yeah.
If people aren't learning how to thrive from our conversations, and people could mean two people.
Yeah.
You know, if we've done that for people that we love or people that are in relationship with us or people that we care about, then I think that's enough. It's enough to tell us to keep pushing.
That's good. That's really good. I agree with that too, especially the part about what happens after you've had a conversation is a seed planted for some change.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, I think you would agree with this. The fruit is that, are you valuing yourself more? Do you understand that you're enough? Do you understand that you can do whatever you are called to do and that you're not alone? Like if you can even have a seed for that, for us, that is why we're having these conversations. Like what you're experiencing, you're not the only person that's experienced it. Like we all have in some capacity. And this is how, like this is how you set a boundary. This is how you advocate for yourself. This is how you ensure that you matter. Yeah. Because it impacts every other part of your life. So thank you for calling out. I appreciate it. All right. What's the music for the moment? What does it feel like?
This song that I was listening to this morning, Peter Collins, You Got This. And basically the song is just it is a full like song of encouragement, just knowing that I'm sending you love, I'm sending you light, I'm sending you joy. Keep pushing, because you got this. You can do this.
Yeah.
And no matter what you need to do, if you need to pivot, you need to take a break, whatever it is, like keep pushing towards the journey. Keep pressing forward in the journey. Keep pushing toward the goal. Celebrate those incremental wins. Learn from the things that you need to learn from. Take the lesson, but keep going. You got this.
That's good stuff. And I had heard that song before, but even listening to that song on Spotify and noticing the whole album is called Enlightened, seems like it's some really nice acoustic affirmative music that I definitely want to tap into and listen to a little bit more.
Yeah. Peter Collins, I think he's gonna be my dude for a minute. I'm gonna tap into him.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll check him out.
Check out the Music for the Moment playlist that we have in our show notes, and you can check out all the songs that we've had for all the vibes for all of our episodes. 70, shawty, turn up.
Yes, Lord.
And if
see y'all in January.
If you made it this far in the episode, that must mean that you like what you hear. There's something here that you like. So we invite you to like, follow, subscribe, rate the thing, leave us some ratings, and we'll shout you out on the episode. Actually, we should start doing that, reading some of the ratings that we get, so you can hear the things that we hear on the back end of it. And like we always say, y'all, as evidenced by this here conversation, life will always present you with a haze. But we all have everything that we need within us to navigate through it.
Yeah. And the most important thing is that you're not alone. Join us next time. We appreciate you joining us this time too. But keep joining us. We're going to take this journey together. Whensoever you see us again.
All
right, y'all. Peace.